Om Ariva Ratanobal Samhata Yatra Nadyaha Saishan Charate Bahuda Jaya Manaha Om Ityevam Dhyayata Atmanam Svasti Vaha Paraya Tamasaha Parastat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. There in the heart, where all the subtle nerves meet, like the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, there shines the Atman, abides the Atman, stationary, unchanging, yet becoming manifold. Meditate upon that self as Om, and Godspeed to you in crossing over to the farther shore beyond all darkness. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. So today we're working on the 15th verse of the Encomium. And in it, I mean, the two verses that I selected, well, first ending the meditation period with the Gayatri, where it says, and may that one ineffable presence guide and protect us and protect the three worlds eternally. That is pertinent to what we will be studying tonight. And also that whole idea of all the subtle nerves meeting in the heart, like the spokes of a chariot wheel. And it's there that we discover the Atman abiding. Again, these are pertinent to what we're going to study. Let me share my screen with the verse under study tonight. As I began to sport in the various lokas, the three chains of transmigration cast their shackles towards me. So my illumined preceptor transmitted to me the teaching of the three kinds of purity to ensure my freedom. So Sri Ramakrishna, we're going to take this as a whole, this verse. Sri Ramakrishna has told us that the three lower chakras, which are associated or correlated with the three realms that are talked about in the Gayatri Mantra, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, that these are the realms of transmigration. And it isn't until we arrive at the heart center that we have the opportunity to break free of those chains of transmigration. Those chains of transmigration are sakama karma, which is self-motivated or ego-oriented or desire-based action, attachment, raga, and desire, spriha is the Sanskrit in this case. So these three, selfish actions, attachment, and desire, these are the three chains of transmigration. And we can readily see that they are in operation for those who are transmigrating. So taking this as a whole and beginning with the first line, I began to sport in the various lokas. And from there, the three chains of transmigration cast their shackles towards me. So our poet is talking about sporting in the three worlds. Now we can interpret this in several different ways, and they're all useful. One, we can just think that he's talking about multiple lifetimes and all the different worlds that he's visited. We can also think about it in terms of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, because Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha are also loosely translated with waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Also, we know from our studies from the Upanishads, specifically the sage, the Rishi Pippalada, that he says that those who have not connected the states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, they stay on the wheel of transmigration. So we have to connect them up. And we know that that has to do with connecting the waking state into, which is where we are quote unquote conscious, we need to connect that up with the dream state so that our dream state becomes lucid. And we need to connect both of those up with the deep sleep state so we don't go blank and unconscious in that state. I mean, it's called pragya. Our consciousness is called pragya at that state, which means that it's awareness. It should be full of knowledge, but instead we go unconscious. So let's backing up a little bit. If we're creating actions selfishly, if we're performing actions with egoistic motive, with desire-based motive, then we're creating samskaras. And the samskaras operate at the unconscious level, which means that they're spurring us on in the waking state. They're in our dream state, but we don't really recognize them. And then they're in the deep sleep state as, seeds, because that's also the causal state. Those are going to be the causes. So let's take a look for a moment at this chart that is taken from the perspective of Patanjala Yoga. And this is just sort of giving us a basis for for going even further with sporting in the various lokas and the 3 chains of transmigration. And then when we actually unwrap those teachings with charts. So, the thing about samskaras is that, they are there impelling our actions and also our reactions to things. And then we create them with actions. And so it's just this constant revolving thing. But they have different conditions. So the conditions of samskaras are expanded in the conscious state. So that would be in our waking state. They are expanded. We recognize them or we see them. In our dream and deep sleep state, those are our unconscious states, right? If in the unillumined person. And here we find that they are dormant, overpowered, or attenuated. Let's start with the good one first, attenuated. So we've learned in Babaji's classes that the yogis attenuate samskaras and karmas through spiritual discipline. And attenuated means that through repeated spiritual disciplines and keeping the mind, what does that mean? Spiritual disciplines, our meditation, our mantra practice, our keeping our mind always going back to the nature of reality, to the true nature of the self, and getting that witness perspective, resisting desires as they come up, desires that are not beneficial. So when these are attenuated, then they become like, as Sri Ramakrishna said, a burnt rope. And even before they become a burnt rope, the yogis have the ability to see them and ignore them. They are extremely weakened, and so they can control them. So that's, you may remember a couple of months ago, we were talking about the 3 kinds of, I forget what they're called, but, the 3 kind, yeah, Nirodha Parinama. I can remember the Sanskrit, but it's a little harder to come up with the English. It's a state of control. And if we exert that state of control over the mind, then this attenuation happens. All right, so then the next kind, these are overpowered and dormant. Now, this is not so good. Dormant means that they're there lurking. They're like the bear in the back of the cave. You know it's there somewhere and it's going to rise. All it needs is the right opportunity. Okay, but for now, it's dormant, that samskara. Now, of course, we're talking both about positive, negative, and mixed samskaras in all of this. As far as the attenuation, now we want to attenuate samskaras, period. But in the beginning, of course, we want to water the better ones. So, think about how unfortunate it would be if our good samskaras were dormant or overpowered. And let's talk about overpowered. They're overpowered, say, because you live in a worldly family, so your samskaras for spiritual discipline don't get a chance to be watered. On the more positive side, there's some samskaras lurking in there for stealing, but you live in a moral, ethical family, and so that keeps it at bay, or you live next to a police station that keeps it at bay. So that's what's going on. There's something more powerful holding back a samskara in overpowered, and dormant is it just doesn't have the right atmosphere. So these are operating in the unillumined state. These are operating in an unconscious state. So we can see that we want to bring our awareness into all states. So in the teaching of A, U, and M, we're also told that the states, these are 3 different modes of our awareness. Waking is called Vaishvanara, and dreaming is called Taijasa, which actually means with light. And pragya is the deep sleep state. And so think about it. We're one consciousness, right? I mean, even from the standpoint of one body, one embodied individual, it's one consciousness. And yet it's got these 3 modes and we don't have them connected. So it's very important to bring everything in, to bring our awareness into everything. So the condition of these samskaras in the superconscious state are where they're in the sabija, so with seeds still. So, yogically, we would say in the sampragyata samadhis, then we would be having matured or maturing samskaras of samadhi there, because superconscious, this is the dream and deep sleep. We can associate it with the dream and deep sleep of one in an illumined state. So they bring their consciousness into it. So we don't lose our discrimination. We don't lose our witness. We don't segregate different parts of our consciousness. When we look at these 3 states of consciousness along with Turiya, we find that the waking state is really very special. And the waking state is associated with the Bhur Loka, the physical loka. And, we've heard many times that if you're going to attain illumination, you need to break the chains of karma and transmigration. We have to do that in the waking state, in the Bhur Loka, because one of the reasons they give is that the good and bad are evenly placed. So there's this struggle that goes on. So, so for the same reason, we want to bring this waking state consciousness and expand it into the dream state, into the deep sleep state. and what I was starting to say before was that from our waking state, even before we've broken the chains of transmigration, we have memory of some of our dreams at least, and we have memory of having no memory from the deep sleep state. That's the only state of awareness in our consciousness where we have this access through memory towards the other two segregated or aspects of modes of consciousness. In the dream state, in the unillumined person, there's no memory of the waking state, no memory or thought about the deep sleep state. And in the deep sleep state, in the unillumined person, it's just a state of, it may be pragya, but there's a veil of ignorance over it, and we don't remember it. So again, this waking state is so precious. This life here on earth is very precious, primarily for the ability to realize ourself as one unlimited consciousness. So I've sort of already talked about all of this. So yeah, keep all of this in mind as we continue to move through. There we go. So let's go back to some things that Sri Ramakrishna said. Okay, we already said that Sri Ramakrishna correlates the lower three chakras, which are the base of the spine, the procreative center, and the navel, with transmigration, with worldliness, actually. Eating, drinking, procreation takes up most of people's activity. And when we say eating, that can mean earning money to eat. So Sri Ramakrishna says, okay, so we know that we have to break through the Vishnu Granthi that we've heard about to rise up to the heart chakra. And Sri Ramakrishna calls the heart chakra, this center, the parlor of God. But he also says that we are not completely safe there, that it's not until awareness arises to the Vishuddha chakra, which means, Vishuddha means very, very pure, that we no longer will fall back down into the lower centers and stay there. So he says that at this station, one no longer talks of anything but God or of truth. So let's take a look at the role of food and prana in self-realization to kind of expand on how this change, this transition works. This is one of the charts that we could use to do this. Another chart would be the 9 ways of dealing with desire that has those twin modes of Maya operating, higher Maya and lower Maya. So let's take a look here. So here we have the Muladhara, which is the root chakra, the Svadhisthana, the primal or sexual organ chakra, and then the Manipura, the vital chakra. So as we have our early spiritual awakening, in here, right between these two, is that Vishnu Granthi. We have early spiritual awakening. We have the observance of celibacy or strong moderation. We have moderation of sense life. You can put these together. We have the beginning, inception of spiritual practice, sadhana, and refined prana begins to flood the nadis. Now, this makes sense when we think about how, if we are taking in food and we're blessing it and we're leading a conscious life oriented towards spiritual practice, then that prana from food stores up. And it gets, and when we use it, when we use it for spiritual practice, ojas develops, which later develops into tejas. So from this refined prana, because we are sublimating desire and attachment and, sublimating the outgoing energy into the senses towards the objects, and we're bringing it in and putting it on spiritual truth, spiritual practices, then that's giving us that refined psychic prana that begins to develop. And then the release of udgata, which refers to kind of the, not kind of, but it's sort of the testing of Kundalini being able to rise. We might feel, that rise of consciousness, but it comes back down again. It's just testing. So this is what's going on as we reach the Anahata chakra. And going from, remember, we're looking at this because Sri Ramakrishna has said that if we do not rise higher than the heart chakra, there's still the danger of falling back down. So what is going on that brings us to this Vishuddha chakra? So we have the maturation of devotion. That one's really important. I remember years ago, Babaji saying that, and it might have been something that he and Lex did. They had heard the truth of non-duality. They'd had a strong spiritual practice. They were abiding mostly in sattva. They could understand the scriptures. They could take the import and use it, and keep that perspective. What more do we do? And they took that to the swamis and were told, now increase your devotion for God. So this is extremely important. So it further ripens the ego. I mean, in the heart chakra, we might be so imbued with the feeling of, of having experiences. And this is also one of the things we have to mature, this part about the experience and the experiencer. We have to know that there's a difference between those two, and to recognize that the experience is not the end all and be all. We have to get beyond experience. Those of you who were at the retreat in May and received that sheet on waking, dreaming, and deep sleep saw where, as we're approaching Nirvikalpa or approaching Turiya, at a very sublime state comes awakening. And Gaudapada tells us that awakening is not an experience. So that's like a koan. We have to think about that. So the other thing that happens is that there's cessation of new karmas. And how can that happen? Because we're giving up selfish actions and we're attenuating those samskaras. We gain the ability to meditate. Why? Because we have the ability to concentrate. And this is also based on having one-pointed devotion and attention on a single ideal, truth, our Ishtam, God. This brings us to a state of concentration, also because we're not creating any new karmas, which means we're not being impelled by different kinds of desires and attachments. We're able to practice asamvedana, non-acceptance of it, non-reaction. There's another word, but I'm blanking out on it. Intensification of yogic fire. This expression, yogic fire, it seems to be used in a number of different ways. Sometimes it actually means the Atman. Maybe most of the time it does, but maybe it's in the sense of the fire of yoga, which is based upon intuiting the Atman. Yeah. So, and with this comes the ability to teach and transmit. So this, and begin to have transcendent experiences. So all this, helps us reach to this Vishuddha chakra right here, and then aim us towards the Agya chakra. Once we begin to have those transcendent experiences, it reminds me of what Swami Asheshananda said once. And we've all heard this before, but I'll just repeat it. Somebody asked Swami, Asheshanandaji, why would I want to be sugar instead of taste sugar? And Swami's response was, only the ones who haven't yet tasted sugar think that way. Those who have tasted it want to become it. They want to merge and become it. So here we see this, we begin to have these transcendent experiences, and they're going to aim us towards that Agya chakra, which will be kind of the end of duality. So we've seen what's going on when we're getting up and out of those chains of transmigration. Let's see what else came up that was pertinent about that. So when we talk about how he began to sport in the various lokas, and he saw these three chains of migration, again, this could be over lifetimes. It could be in one lifetime of all this waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It could also refer to reaching the point where awareness is flooding those three states of awareness, but there's still some attraction to the occult powers, and an attraction to the sense of personal agency. So why does the teacher, well, let's see if there's more to say. We talked about that. Okay, so the rest of that verse has to do with, therefore, his illumined and benevolent, compassionate preceptor gave him the teaching of the three kinds of purity. And we might even have a guess after going through all of this, that those three kinds of purity are there to bring us to the heart chakra, so we can, which is our first leg up and out of transmigration. So now we will launch into the different kinds of karma. At this point, are there any questions or comments? All righty. So we looked again at those. We said before that those three chains of transmigration are sakama karma, raga, and spriha. Selfish works, attachment, and desire. So years ago, still, Babaji started writing in that Sword of the Goddess book, which I've said became the footfalls of the Indian rishis. And in it, he did a chapter specifically on these three, the three chains of transmigration. And as he was talking about sakama karma, of course, he backed up and said, well, let's hear about karma. What are the different kinds of karma? And it was very interesting how he laid it out. He said, there are three kinds of karma regarding time. So, which refer to past karma, the fructifying karma called prarabdha, and future karma, agami. So three kinds of karma regarding time, past, present, and future. And then there are two kinds of karma with regards to ethics and morality. I mean, these are different ways that we can examine karma. Positive and negative with regards to ethics and morality. And I think later on, he would also talk about mixed. Oh, and maybe that comes up later. Then two kinds of karma regarding action, which are with desire and without desire. And then other views of karma are that there's good karma, bad karma, and mixed karma. The thing about these is that it shows how good actions can have bad effects and vice versa, how bad actions can actually have positive effects. And it also reveals that most actions by far are mixed in the unawakened person, even in those who are waking up. So let's take a look at, the two workhorses that we have for this topic, which are the dynamics of karma and the four different kinds of karma. So I know most of us here have heard all of this before, but we're taking it up kind of in a different, or let's say a very specific context. We're not going to talk so much about this Kriyamani. It's very important, this Kriyamani, but it's for me, a little elusive to talk about. So we've already talked about this, the sanchita, which is our past karma, which is accumulated. And it's like arrows being held in a scabbard. But they're being held in a scabbard for later down the road. We've already taken up a big handful of those and released them into this lifetime. And it's good to know that it's useful to know that when we say that, it means these are the arrows of karma that are responsible for the kind of bodies we have, the gender we have, the important occasions of our life, like birth and marriage, maybe even divorce, big things like that. Finding our teacher. These are the big arrows that we shoot just before our current life, and also different important events that happen. And then the way we handle these present karmas that are coming into fruition, they determine they become arrows that are loaded into the scabbard for the next lifetime. Sometimes they manifest in this lifetime as well. So that's just a little review here. Here's a good quote from Holy Mother. Devout recitation of the Lord's name reduces the effects of karma to almost nothing. Thus, where a sword is destined to fall, a pin must at least prick. So here, when I was quoting, summarizing Babaji's chapter, it kind of speaks to this part. The four 4 shades of karma. So this is the 2 kinds. It includes the 2 kinds, negative and positive, and then also, oh no, there's other 2. And then also this mixed, and then also colorless or neutral, eradicated kinds of karma. So mixed good and bad means that we have motivated karma. And so he quotes from Sri Krishna here. Motivated karma is far inferior to that performed in the equanimity of mind. Take refuge in evenness of the mind. Wretched are the result seekers. Learn to do everything as an offering to me. Thus shall you be free from the bondage of actions yielding good and bad results. And when we look at bad karma, we see that that just binds us very strongly into the wheel of transmigration. And the white also, it's like a gold chain when we are attached to good karma. Think about those, what is it, the eight fetters. One of them has to do with one's own good conduct. We get attachment to that. Now, in the beginning, replacing bad conduct with good conduct, of course, is very important. But when that becomes a bondage, that's like when Swamiji says, that verse out of the Song of the Sannyasin that talks about how chains of gold and chains of iron both bind us. So we have to let go of them. And so that's where this colorless karma comes in. And it's that one whose intellect is unattached everywhere, who has subdued his self, from whom desire has disappeared. That one, by renunciation, attains the supreme state of freedom from action. So let me read. This colorless, this neutral or eradicated shade of karma is very much like this in the dynamics of karma chart, like this akarma, selfless. It's, that shade of karma comes about because one performs selfless action. And as we can see here, Babaji describes that as actions devoid of design and desire, acts successfully subjected to the fire of yoga, aka consciousness of the Atman within, of the truth of non-duality, acts engaged in while thinking, I do nothing, because that I always has to refer to the Atman and never to the body, never to the mind, never to the emotions or the passions, and never to the conditions that go with any of those. So the I alone should refer to the Atman. And in that sense, we engage in actions thinking, I do nothing. Actions free of hope and desire for possessions. Actions done by the mind, steeped in wisdom. So we keep that discrimination between the real and the unreal going on, the self and the non-self going on, the orientation that the Purusha never acts, only Prakriti acts. The Purusha can never be the agent of action. And that all of phenomena is there for Purusha, not the other way around. So action, okay, and then work undertaken for the sake of sacrifice. This is selfless action, and it leads to that neutral, colorless, eradicated type of karma. So I want to read this. In fact, I'll let you read it with me. So this is taken out of Babaji's chapter. Nishkama karma, nishkama means without desire. Nishkama karma is almost a contradiction in terms, in that whatever work appears to be going on is completely without desire-based motive, and therefore is without repercussion. Whereas sakama workers are all involved in their work and its outcome, and receive the effects, good and bad, daily from that regimen, nishkama workers are not really working in the usual sense of the term, and thus have no action and reaction taking place on a subtle inner level. So detached are they from the process of cause and effect that if reaction were to take a form and go looking for them, it could not find them due to their transparent view around work and outcome. It is like in the case of thick smoke blowing against glass and tainting it, but being unable to do so to a screen. That's one of Sri Ramakrishna's analogies. So smoke goes right through a screen, but it will taint glass. So when we perform sakama karma or nishkama karma, then that, it's like blowing, our actions are just going through the screen and there's no action, reaction taking place. And notice here where it says, so detached are they from the process of cause and effect that if reaction were to take a form and go looking for them, it couldn't. This process of cause and effect, again, if you were at the May retreat with Babaji on Gaudapada's Karika, we learned about how Gaudapada treats cause and effect and actually proves that it doesn't actually exist. So here's not the place to really talk about it. I'm only raising it for those of you who were at that retreat to go back and think about that. So this non-origination of everything also gets at that point that if it's unoriginated, then there's no cause and effect there, because cause and effect only happen with quote unquote discrete real things. And there are no discrete real things that are separate from reality. So now let's move on to attachment and desire. And as soon as I started thinking about attachment and desire, it was like, wow, which came first? Like the chicken and the egg. And then I remembered that joke, spurred on from something that Swami said, that something was neither destroyed. Oh, I forget the whole story. But in any case, it brings up the chicken or the egg. Which one came first? And the answer is neither, because both are unoriginated. So here we all kind of laugh. All right, so attachment and desire. Does attachment give rise to desire, or is desire already there as a samskara in us, causing us to react with attachment to things and reach out to it? Well, we can think about what Sri Krishna says in the Gita. So from one view, he says, and I bet all of us are already thinking about this verse, brooding on the objects of the senses, one develops attachment to them. From attachment comes desire. From desire, anger sprouts forth. From anger proceeds delusion. From delusion, confused memory. From confused memory, the ruin of reason. And due to the ruin of reason, one perishes. So, but back to the top of that, brooding on the objects of the senses. So here's a really big clue. that we have to take our minds off the objects of the senses and put them on what is real. So when we think about waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, that these are modes of consciousness that are in the state of not in a state of non-discrimination, they are veiling the reality, the one consciousness, the turiya, the atman, underlying it, the one self-cognition common in all those states. We get distracted by the phenomena in the waking state. We go unconscious in the dream state and in the deep sleep state. If we think of these as like plastic sheets, here's the waking state. I'm going to lift that up and here's our meditation going past the A of AUM. Here's the dream state and all that it contains. And I'm lifting that off. And next I see the dream state, the deep sleep state, and I lift that off. And what's left is what is the reality. And we can do this in so many different ways. Think about that chart about the true meaning of objects and how every object has its external manifestation, its internal, or shall we say, its atomic manifestation, its internal manifestation as a thought in the mind, and then it has its Buddha nature or its Atmic nature. And all of that is right there. We're seeing, yes, with the eyes, but we're also seeing with the mind. And there's a seer back of the mind. And we just want to remove each of these. So the first step is to not brood on that external object and peer into it and see what's more real than the physical and then what's more real than the subtle. So part of what this means also, again, back to that retreat in May, is that these objects do not have a real existence of their own. There's just so many different ways you can say that. Brooding mind or brooding and thinking repeatedly about an object as if it has a real existence opens us up to attraction and desire and the actions that are based on that. So Sri Krishna says, sense objects drop out for the abstinent person, the person who rejects, who just like renounces it, but not from a mature place of drilling down to the reality. Okay. Sense objects drop out for the abstinent person, though not the longing for them. We haven't gotten rid of that samskara because we haven't pierced through to the reality in that object. His longing also ceases when he intuits the supreme, right? So Sri Krishna said it right there. I'm quoting right out of the Gita. Sense objects drop out for the abstinent person, though not the longing for them. This longing also ceases when one intuits the supreme. The excited senses impetuously carry away the mind of even a wise person striving for perfection. Let's take a look at that. The excited senses impetuously carry away the mind of even a wise person striving for perfection. So think about our yogi in this poem, this Stotram, English Stotram, that is sporting in the various worlds, and he sees these chains of transmigration showing up. He sees, attachment is rearing its head. Oh, desire is coming at me, and with it, the potential for all this selfish action, right? So even in someone who has taken to the path of yoga, true yoga, these things can carry us away if we don't control them all, sit focused on the Lord or Divine Mother as the supreme, or truth as the supreme goal. Only then does one's wisdom become constant, because the senses and the mind attached to the senses have come under subjugation. The disciplined yogi, moving among the objects with the senses thus under control and free from attraction and aversion, gains in tranquility. And this verse is so beautiful. Not the desirer of desires, but that one attains peace, in whom all desires merge, even as rivers flow into the ocean, which is full and unmoving. And so that's how we move about these objects, never giving them our mind. Never mind. That one attains peace who lives devoid of longing, freed from all desires, without the feeling of I and mine. Holy Mother tells us that desire is at the attachment is at the root of all desires. It is the cause of repeated births and deaths, and is the main obstacle on the path of liberation. So I'm looking at where to go next. Other things that we know, I'm just kind of like throwing out things back to us, things that we know, but we want to make a big basket of these to work with. Think about the 5 kleshas: ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. Think about how that teaching works in with all of this, So ignorance, that's that first veil where now there's I and other. In the beginning, it's just kind of the awareness of other. And then from that springs egoism. And from that sense of separation and distinction, and the misapprehension that this distinction is real, springs up attraction and aversion. Another way to look at this would be to take a look at the nidanas of Buddhism. But we only have 5 minutes left, and I think we've gone through so much right now. Why don't we take this up next time, and then also launch into the 3 purities, which fuse both Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. And in a sense, it takes us right back to the Kriya Yoga that we studied last time. So let me go ahead and close with a chant. Om Masato Masat Gamoya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamoya, Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya, Abhira Bira Mayedi, Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to immortality. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all living beings. Om Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om Tat Sat.